Okay, we're gonna try this again. I just released a video I'm not very happy with, and that's the Grant Stone last. One, it is hard to talk about last. I don't want to deny that. But two, this household has gotten a little bit more difficult to record, and I didn't mention it last time. But we got a new little monster in the house, so he might be making a little bit of noise, and that's also kind of why you might see some weird camera changes for how we do things. So when we talk about lasts, I think it's an interesting thing to talk about Truman because this would probably be the boot company that I know the second most about when it comes to their lasts. So this was what we're going to start with. And I want to talk about the elephant in the room too, which is everybody's afraid that Truman's going to stop making boots. It might be based on their recent tweets, but let's start with, let's assume they are going towards a bigger market, right? And I want to kind of carry that analogy forward because when you look at the funnel of market size, right, you can only probably convert so much. You know, you start out with the total audience, there's a certain percent that hear your message and a certain percent that convert to sales. It's more complicated than that. But let's start with the 79 last, because if we look at that funnel, the most amount of people are going to know this last the best. It is a great last because it kind of has what I'm going to call a rounded toe, and I'm going to call it kind of like a stubby toe. I've heard some people call it almond. I don't know if I would call it almond. It's got some asymmetry to it, but to me, it's a very stubby, rounded toe. And what you'll see from this boot particularly is a lot of people complain about the toe space. The volume in the toe space is where people have the most issue. Obviously, me being a 10.5 double E, they would recommend that I went to a 10 double E, and I emailed them and they confirmed that. I don't know if I liked that suggestion. This actually is 10.5 double E in what I went with because their boots are 270 degree Goodyear welted. So you'll see that it goes about 270 degrees around, which gives them the ability to hammer in the heel and allow the heel to be a little bit more flush with the back stay of the boot. Now, when we look at just the construction of it, we do have a toe cap. I've been told it's not a true toe cap, that it's just kind of sewn on and there's not actually two layers, but there's a stiffener in most of them, but they do allow you to have some non-celastic toe puffs here, which I've heard you kind of have to go a half size up anyways. And their 79 lasts typically have this double backstay where you've got like the butt crack right here along with the apple bottom is what I call it on the back here. Now this is their Coyote Rough Out, which is kind of a signature, and it was part of their MTO series. So you'll see I have the mismatched tongue here. You'll see a lot of people complain when it comes to not just a 79 last, but a lot of Truman's, they'll use really thick leathers here on the tongue, which takes time to break in. And you'll see that on my next boot that I'm going to show you. But that's just something to keep in mind with all of theirs. Now, getting back to the 79 last, you see we will have the quarters being an open laced, obviously, like most of the Truman boots, sitting firmly in kind of the casual thing. But let's talk about the fit. How does the 79 last hit? And I said earlier, I'm going to disagree about their half size down. And I'm not the only one. I know there's a lot of people out there that say that too. So I'm going to say this right now, very plain and clear English. If you have most of your volume in your toes, like I do, I'm a 10.5 double E, I'm going to say you're going to probably want to consider more true to size if you're in that space like I am as well. The 10 double E, man, it just feels like it's a little bit stubbier. You see, there's not much room between where the quarters and the shoe ends here. The toe cap is up a little bit higher than I feel like most toe caps. But what you're going to see is the stiffener right here. Basically, from here all the way up to where this toe cap is, there's not going to be a lot of give at the front of your foot here, the boot. So as a result, if you're going to have a little bit of a war, if it's a little bit tight, I do think sizing up is the right thing to do, or true to size for that matter, because you're going to have a lot more play in the leather typically once you get past this elastic toe puff and the cap toe part of it. And the last thing that's really unique about the 79 last when you compare it to their others is the backstay. So we mentioned earlier the construction, but you'll also want to see how bulbous this is. It is very round, and depending on the shape of your heel, right? So if you have like Haglund's deformity or whatever, if you're getting a lot of pressure right here, that this probably is not a good last for you, because this is very much a last that wraps and hugs a bulbous heel, I will say. I would say I have an average heel, and I can feel contact basically all the way around this heel. It really did mold because it's got also a leather counter in the back here that kind of conforms to your foot after, for me, is probably about 50 to 80 hours of wear. It started to really hug my foot, and I've got a lot of lockdown. My biggest concern with the 79 last, as I talked about how bulbous it was, I don't have the widest heel here. Mine is kind of average. Not a problem for me with the shape of my heel being kind of average. I still have contact in most of these places. I do have room on either side of my heel. Like, it's not a complete, getting the sides of my heel enclosure. But the fact that I have so much contact, at least enough of it coming around here, I don't have any wiggle room left and right, that it actually is a pretty good seal for at least, I would say, an average sized heel. So room to grow. So if you have a wider heel, this is probably the last you want to look at them. And if you are having wider toes, you definitely want to go true to size or size up considerably for the 79 last. Now the next, if we're going down the funnel in terms of like the most amount of people have had the 79, the 20 last is the next kind of big friend that we've had for a while. I know Truman had the 55 for a while, and then upcoming next will be the 56, but the 20's been around longer than the 56. And the 20 is their attempt at a mock toe. Now, what's interesting is the volume of the toe is there for the mock toe, but you'll notice it doesn't have the stitching, which I really enjoy, and I think is just like a great addition to the Truman Boot lineup. Now, the 20 last, they call it D. I don't know if I would call it a D, to be honest. What I got here, and they only sell it in the standard D width. This is actually closer, in my opinion, with my foot, particularly with the toes where I need it the most, closer to maybe an E width for how most boot people kind of classify their boots. I think most 20 lasts, I can't think, actually, if Truman has ever released an unstructured toe box on the 20, let me know. I can't think of one. I feel like if this were not structured, the leather would collapse and it might just be a little bit weird. It's very spacious up here. When it comes to the backstay, you'll see we have the singular backstay here in terms of like the apple bottom leading up into the top, and it's a little bit tighter in terms of the width. Now, this would probably be closer to an actual D width on the average shoe. Again, these are very broad statements. The feet are 3D, right? But I would say that the heel hugs a lot tighter. I've got perfect grip around my heel in this one. The 20 last actually might be a little bit better than me. Now, I had to size up because they do not offer this in a wide format. So I actually got this in 11, and I have worn 11 or 11 and a half shoes. And since the toe box is quite generous, lots of room for the toes, this has been a pretty good fit for me. So don't be afraid to size up. Now, I have had some people say like, well, I'm a 10.5 double E. I actually find the 10 in the 20 is good. Here's my take on that. I think this kind of sits between the double E and the standard D width when it comes to the Truman. So it's like if you have a 10.5 D versus a 10.5 double E, obviously the double E is wider and it is going to be a little bit longer on the Truman. I feel like if this were a 10.5, this would be perfectly in between the two. So if you're kind of in between sizes, like how I feel like I am between a 10 double E and a 10.5 double E, this one seems to kind of fit in between the two of them. Again, heel width a little bit tighter, good for people like me, and a little bit wider than what it advertises, I think, for the toe box essentially. But this is the mock toe. You will see that it's got a very bulbous shape to it. You can see that it's not attempting to be wide, but it definitely feels spacious on the inside. Again, the usual open lace quartering system. And this is, I think I forgot to mention, this is the Coach Rambler leather for my 20 last. And I kind of wanted to show you guys something a little bit different. This is a very interesting boot, not only just for its texture, but also the rigidity that it offers when it comes to the 20 last. But in terms of the construction, it should be about the same. 270 Goodyear welt, so it's going to have some heft to it. The midsole, all leather components, leather heel counter. And I guess this whole time I've been saying Celastic toe puff. I'm pretty sure it's Celastic. I don't think they use leather up there. I think Weston from Rose Anvil recently cut apart one of the boots, and he spent a lot of time on various parts of the boot. I don't remember if he covered what was in the toe puff. I'll need to probably go review that, but I don't think you buy based on that anyways. So yeah, I'm trying to think, is there anything else you guys would want to know about the 20 versus 79? I feel like we've covered a lot in terms of like the in-betweenness of them. So hopefully that gives you enough information for those. Now let's jump to last but not least, which is our friend, the 56, the newest and most recent release from Truman. The 56 last is the one that I think I'll have the least amount to say about, only because it's the newest. Some people can compare it to the 55, but I don't think they make the 55 anymore. So this is, I'm not 100% sure, but I think this was one of the, if not the earliest, one of the earlier releases. This is the Brown Ruffian on the 56 last. And for most of the quote unquote, I'm going to say for me, problems of the 79 last in terms of a shorter front of the foot, not as much volume in the ball of the foot area. And as a result, like the puff kind of battling those that have more volume in the front. This solves a lot of that, right? It's definitely got like, it feels to me like it's got like the most amount of girth in the ball and an extension to the front, while at the same time, it doesn't have the battle that I've never had an issue like we talked about earlier with the 79 locking in, but I'm not everybody. I'm just relaying my experience. Some people have had a problem with that heel being too bulbous in the back here. I actually think it's not as drastic to me as the 20. It kind of sits between the 20 and the 79, but I think the heel has a little bit better of a lockdown too. Again, it's going to have the double backstay approach like we talked about with the 79 last. So honestly, to me, it's like they heard a lot of the complaints that people had with the 79 last in terms of, well, I'm going to say complaints from people like me who like, well, no, I need to go true to size to get a better fit. But even then, you know, that's going to change where the ball hits basically in terms of heel to ball measurement for those that, you know, do the Brannick measurements. I feel like this allows some people that might have had to have sized up in the 79 to go back to their half size down from the Brannick. I don't think everyone. Some people will still be happy with the exact same 79, the exact same 56 last. I think it's kind of split. If you were a person who tried the half down and were like, this is just slightly short and my toe just needs a little bit more space, like millimeters of space, I think you could try the 56 in that. Now, with that said, you know, that whole elephant in the room of them potentially going after a bigger mass market, my money is that if they continue with the last, which they probably should because lasts are expensive, building all those different models in terms of them ramping up their production, they had to have a lot of lasts to fire through boot creation quick enough. This is going to be the one that I think they're going to double down on, would be my guess. They've already got it in a lot of different sizes. They don't have the double wide, I think, in some of the higher end ones. I don't know about lower, but I do know I've seen some complaints about that. But I think this is the one they're going to double down on because a lot of this almond, I'm going to call it an almond. I know everybody kind of disagrees, but it's more asymmetrical. I think agrees with more men's feet. And as a result, it's going to be more agreeable for most people when they try it out. I think it does have less volume when you look at the vertical stack here. I didn't measure this, but it feels like there's less volume and it looks like it. I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem to impact the comfortability unless you obviously had a lot of vertical volume in your toes there. So yeah, I think it's very close to the 79, but it extends and shrinks the volume in the front toe box, if that makes sense. It shrinks it vertically, extends it horizontally. And I think the ball might be a little bit tighter, probably closer to the 79 than I'm implying. That hopefully gives you some information that if you're a guy with a lot of, you know, volume in the toes, it seems like the 56 is kind of the way to go, and even the 20. If you have less volume in the heel, the 20 last definitely provides the biggest, snuggest fit. Again, I'm comparing this from a double wide. I can't talk to the standard width, though I've been told that I should try the standard width sizing up, and that'll work just fine. But yeah, that's been my experience with these boots. Hopefully that gives you guys an idea of what to kind of guess at, because I've heard that Truman is a more difficult customer service company to deal with when it comes to returns, and they put, we may charge you. I don't know. I can't speak to it positive or negative because I've never tried it. We'll talk to you in the next video. If you haven't liked, comment, subscribed, and you're this far into the video, help me out, guys. Come on. You've obviously enjoyed it enough to stick around this much. So Appreciate your time. Peace out.